Hello and welcome to another episode of Chillin' with Dylan. I'm your host Dylan and I am joined by two very, very awesome people, good friends of mine. We have Guy and Kelly. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yep, good to have you all here. We are back to virtual recordings for this particular podcast. These guys are in Auckland, and I am in Wellington for this recording. But anyways, today's topic, it's a very important one to our hearts, I guess. It's about work, and yeah. So if you're listening to a podcast for something entertaining, please turn this off now. But our topic is about software versus data. What is the best career choice out of these two very broad industries and very interesting ones? So I guess to start off with, maybe Guy, would you just want to give a rundown of your career thus far and what you've done and why you are talking about this or have the right to?
Fair enough. That's a very good question, Dylan. So, hi everybody. My name's Guy. My background is coming out of uni. I started as an actual analyst, but then I think after 10 months in, I decided I didn't want to do any more studying, so I switched to do consulting. So now working for a major professional services company based here in New Zealand, and they have a data practice, which kind of does a lot of consulting to big companies about their data needs. But on top of that, we also, build some data products, which has some software engineering side to it. So,
Yeah.
jack of all trades, master of none is my role there.
Yeah, welcome to the world of consultancy. Well, for me, actually, I am very similar. Since you've talked about, I'll just say I am currently doing something very similar to Guy, another consulting slash professional services firm. If you want to find out which one it is, you'll just have to listen to my other podcast, Startups versus Corporates. Anyways, and yeah, I do data analytics as well, in a consulting role with other technology solutions that my team and we build together for our clients. And now, what else do we have in this mix? Kelly, what do you do?
And I guess for a bit of background, so I studied something called engineering science at the University of Auckland. Same with Dylan and Guy. So I guess for those of you who don't know, it's very similar to applied math. So rather than deviating away to consulting, I decided to stick to that. So I've had a career working with cabin crew rostering optimization, so math-based, and then dabbled a little bit in being a data analyst. Also based in New Zealand, I work for an airline, so you can kind of guess what sort of company I work for. And then after that, I decided to want to explore something a little bit more technical. So now I work as a software engineer in the same company to take care of our cabin crew and pilots rostering software. So in some sense, coming full circle, but in an aviation context.
So, yeah, what I'm hearing a lot is we've all done a range of things, a few different types of work. Yeah, and pretty qualified to talk for every single person who's worked in this
Oh yeah,
career. We are
100%.
the representatives. But the one thing that sets us in common, I guess, is that we did study at the same university in the same engineering course, engineering science. We are classmates. So shout
Cool.
out to the University of Auckland Department of Engineering Science for making this podcast possible. that was nerdy, but yes.
You're not
We
wrong though,
wouldn't be-
Dylan.
But we wouldn't be here without them, you know?
Mm.
I wouldn't be earning the money to pay rent without my job, without my degree. And yeah, good times though, good times. It's been a couple of years though that we finished university and have gone out into the workforce now, I think.
It's been 3 years, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
three
Crazy how
years.
fast
Well,
that's
It's
yeah,
flew by.
5th year of working now, I think.
Yeah, we've finished up would have been 2017 or 18. I mean, some of our last years at university. Guy and I, we did conjoint degrees of commerce as well at Auckland University. So
An extra year of
yeah,
studying.
Extra credit.
yeah. Whether that makes us overqualified
Or underqualified.
that is
You be the
up
judge.
to you. As a listeners,
Qualified to some degree.
let us know. I have 2 pieces of paper in my family's place right now. It's up on the wall. Yeah, that's all that matters. Anyways, well, let's just get into it. I think the first thing to start with is just defining what we're talking about. So, I guess if anyone has ideas or your thoughts, what do you think a software developer / software engineer does? I guess Kelly, would you like to start? I guess you're the closest to it at the moment. What do you do? What do people do? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can start. So, my current job title is software engineer. And I feel like a lot of what I do is software development. So what that means is you're creating code stuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
Simple explanation.
Put that
Love
on
it.
Wikipedia. In some sense, when you think of software development, it's like a full process in terms of someone says, hey, this thing's broken, or we want to make an improvement. And then so you code stuff to make the change. And then there's like a whole process of like reviewing it, testing it, having a user testing it, and then releasing a feature. Like for example, if you have Facebook and they want to add a like button, that in itself, I guess, would be like a feature release. So you would have all these developers working in the background.
Or like,
making
is
sure
that,
it works.
or for example, if Facebook were to change the name to something else, like Meta, they'd like software developers change that on all our platforms. Is that,
Yeah.
A question. Do software developers kind of form up what the, I guess, requirements are for that change? Or are you primarily just within the tech space of, here's what I was taught to do and I'm just going to execute it? Or is there a bit more soft skills involved to that as well?
Normally, when you pick up a ticket, there's already requirements described in it. So I would say that a business analyst, a different role, would do the analysis of what's required. And then I think there is like a little bit of back and forth in communication and being like, what does this requirement mean? Do you mean this? Do you mean that? So there is a bit of leeway.
Okay.
But I think in terms of development, it's more of the implementation of the requirement. I guess that's for software engineering, rather than creating code stuff. I guess it's kind of designing how the code stuff interacts.
Yeah.
So it's a lot about like, I think Guy, probably you understand bits of it from your whatever data engineering fancy stuff.
So is this more the systems or like the infrastructure and different types of things?
I would say so, from my understanding of what our software engineering friends studied in university. Like I guess the design of the code stuff, how it interacts together, how you have the, I guess, software architecture of things. Kind of like you have the house and like the contents within the house.
So I guess your focus is more about actually the implementation of this code and this feature and making sure that's running quite optimal, and just quite, I guess, in that tech space.
Yeah, I would say so.
I don't know. Is there? So, but like, is there often a lot of overlap between those types of work, or is it?
I would say yes. So
Yeah.
I guess if you're designing how code interacts with different systems, it generally is helpful to have a dev background and understand how the code works. Likewise, if you're developing something, having the context of knowing how it fits in a bigger picture also helps you to see things with perspective and to you're fulfilling the requirements, but then also kind of putting your common sense hat on and being like, okay,
Yeah.
we've fulfilled this requirement, but then what if XYZ happens? Does this make sense?
Yeah. Oh, cool. I have one last random question. Is it necessary to use a lot of those jargon terms? I've already heard like dev and I'm like, whoa, like I mean like do our chilling with Dylan listeners know should we go through and define it? Nah, but like but I do I don't know, like for some reason I feel like I hear a lot of terms, like a lot of like, you know, require what have we used? Requirements and features and like a lot of them. One of my favorites is scrums, and I'm like thinking of a whole bunch of software engineers playing rugby and putting their heads behind other people's butts. Because
I mean, I think that's more fun than actual Scrum, but that's just a preference.
For those that don't know, like in New Zealand, the most common use of Scrum is in the sport of rugby. Search that up if you don't know. But like, yeah, and so, I mean, yeah. I guess the next thing we've talked so much about software. What about data? Like, is that different, the same to software developers? Like, what do data analysts, etc., do? Guy, what do you think?
Yeah, great question. So I think from my view on it, it's very similar, but within the environment that is where data plays specifically. Because what we kind of focus on is how does data, where is data being created? How is that moving between platforms? Where does it get stored? And then how is it going to be used moving forward? And so it's not necessarily understanding what is the best type of software to use to create that data. It's more about they're using this data already, and then how can we put it into a space where people can access it when they need to, or so that there's an integrated platform. And so it's a higher level view of what kind of what the data is in the company that's operating. And yeah, so I think within the sphere of if there are, I guess, business transformations, I think data analysts play a role in understanding, bringing to light what are the data needs from different businesses and how does it kind of fit all together. Because a lot of times within companies, business units operate in silos, but fundamentally, for a company to run well, all the data should be integrated into one place, because that's where you can get the most insights. But that's still a work in progress for a lot of companies, and so that's where we kind of sit. So, data analyst in a
nutshell.
In a nutshell,
Yeah.
I was just thinking, you mentioned insights. Okay, like, can you define insights for you? What are insights? It's a magic word. I was also an analyst in a government position before my current role, but this is a big buzzword, insights, that gets thrown around. What is an actual insight?
I guess for me, an insight is the ability to kind of view things to enable better decision-making processes. And for me, where data plays in that is to be able to use what data you have to generate better logical, data-driven decisions rather than something more gut feel. And that there is kind of more support or backing or kind of evidence to why you're making those decisions. And for me, I think I've only ever dealt with, like, I guess, advanced analytics, and the most fun part of what we kind of did for that was applying, like math concepts. There was this model that we used to identify, I guess it was like possible areas of fraud. I forgot what let me just Google it. Sorry. Anyway.
Pro tip for any budding data scientists software engineer, Google is your best friend. We are in this intermission. We are not sponsored by Google, but if you don't know what Google is, maybe Google it. Yes, yes.
Oh no.
Or use Bing. Maybe use Bing.
Oh.
Actually.
Oh yeah.
We'll
So
see who
it's
can.
Benford's law was the
Yeah.
concept we applied, and that kind of gave an insight of applying that law, which states just about how numbers behave in general, and applying it within transactions. And yeah, that with that in mind, that we were able to kind of possibly identify where fraudulent activity could occur, and that for me is like generating insights.
So essentially, the stuff that you did, all the complicated maths and stuff, that helped create some sort of change in the real world. People made better decisions, identify fraud, has that impact, right? Like, so yeah, I guess that's what I was thinking as well. Insights it's sort of like what causes something to change as a result of the data and all that, what the data analysts and stuff do, so that other people can decide better on important things. Like data by itself is pretty useless. Like if it's not, molded and integrated and all that nice stuff that we do in the data space, I guess. I think for me, I was thinking like you can what you do with that as a data analyst, you're basically being a McDonald's. You have raw ingredients, that's your like spreadsheets or like your databases, and then you're either the server and someone comes up and you're like, give me an insight, please, give me a Big Mac insight, and you just deliver it to them. Like, all right, I'll make the burger with and then if they don't want to have any human interaction, you create a human interaction, you create like a dashboard, and then they go to the self-serve. Essentially,
great analogy. I love it.
We make the McDonald's self-serve, or KFC, just to be inclusive. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I'm pretty sure they both need like software people and data people to make all that stuff work. So next time you're at fast food, think about it.
Just making lots of burgers.
Yeah, I think when we talk about data, I think it is quite a big buzzword at the moment. And when we think about, I guess, future job prospects, people are asking like, oh, I want a job in data. But I think working where I am now for the past 2 years, I think that's quite a broad, I guess, industry, and there's niche roles within it.
There's data scientists and data engineers, data analysts. They all have slightly different sort of focuses, I guess, in general. But often they can also do all the other areas, and even software sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I guess in a sense, it's about bridging the gap between technical things and people. And most of the times with these different roles, it's just that your tools are different.
Yep.
Yeah. Very good summary. I like it.
And then one thing I think I do recognize is that it's still quite prevalent within companies where business units and technical units are quite in a silo. They don't really talk to each other. So it's hard to kind of get those business requirements where like they want to do this. It's like, all right, but where is it stored in the back end? And they're like, I don't know. It's in this like web form here, and click this. I'm like, that's not helpful. Where does it go?
Yeah. Do you think on that note, like it's a big problem in a lot of not just companies but government sector and public-private, like all sorts of consulting and industry, like larger organizations just have that problem. Is it maybe because all the technical people in the business side, are they all just making certain assumptions or just have like off-key stereotypes of who they are, like that these software people are like this, that's why we can't work with them? What do you think? Yeah, Kelly, have you ever been stereotyped as
a data analyst,
or like anything that like I guess is not true, but like as just on behalf of your role when people look?
I think yes.
Okay. Yeah,
well, not say stereotype, but I think generally, especially when you work with stakeholders that are non-technical, there is a misunderstanding of what your role involves. So for example, I guess like as Guy described as a data analyst, your job is to report and to make insights. Whereas for some people, they'd just be like, oh, actually, can you get the data for me? Like, I guess kind of like a librarian telling a librarian like, oh, can you get that book for me, sort of thing. And I'm like, oh, but, what do you want for it? It's like, I don't know. It's like, oh, how do I help you?
Or it's like you going up to Macca's and telling the like 17-year-old, high school student, can you like go out to the farm and bring me some, raw beef? And then when they do it, you're like, that's not useful. Why isn't it like edible?
Yeah, pretty much.
And analogies are like the best thing ever in these fields, I feel.
Yeah, because I do think though, especially when you bring up, I guess, misunderstanding of roles. I feel like nowadays, especially within businesses, they want to be, new edge and cutting. They want to have a flat structure, so they come up with like these fancy like title names that kind of don't mean anything, and you're like, what is your role? And similarly for tech as well. So I can see where they're coming from, but also, lol.
True. There's a lot of buzzwords, yeah, and like in both areas, right? In terms of the things that people do that no one understands, like I love it's like things like machine learning and AI and big data. Like majority of people who do sort of want something from it will probably not have the clearest understanding of what some of that stuff can do. Yeah.
But I think on the subject of, I guess, machine learning and AI and data science field in general, I do think that when I kind of came out of university, that's where I wanted to go. That's like, the most exciting thing. That's where all your studying is about, like all these heuristics and like all these
Yes.
fancy stuff they can apply that you can build up from the ground up. Is where I thought I was going to go. But then coming now into work, data, there's so much more to that. Like for a company to be able to execute that, there's so many more things in the background that needs to occur for that to be enabled. And so I think within my company, we kind of work on 3 pillars, where there's the data strategy and governance route. So it's telling companies how can we set up our company so that we have the proper governance, so to make sure that data is clean, that it's being managed, so that people can analyze it. There's the data engineering, which actually builds up all these pipelines to connect the data flows, and then finally the data science, which is I guess the more fun part. But I guess you're not restricted to just that. It is quite a wide field, and I'm quite sure very similar to the software space.
Yeah, I would say that every role has an important job to make. Like for example, you have the people designing the actual like software architecture of like where things are meant to go, and then you have the developers who are more operational side and like actually enabling the things to happen. That being said, like within even the software industry, I'm sure this buzzword of agile has come across in a lot.
Oh yeah.
You may have heard of it. So it's like a way of working that's widely used in the software industry as well. And so even in something as like nerdy in IT space, there are some people who are fully dedicated to interacting with people and managing workflow.
Yeah.
I'll give a hot take, guys. Have you guys heard of hybrid agile? And do you know what that means? That for me is the bane of my existence.
What is
hybrid?
Hybrid agile is taking waterfall, but putting agile processes on top of it.
So what's a waterfall?
So waterfall is the traditional ways in how you project manage. So there's a deliverable you want to do, and then you have to kind of list out the key categories of activities you need to execute to get there. And you have like a number of hours allocated to it to finish this activity, and then the kind of
yes.
So if you think about Gantt charts, that's a clear example of like a waterfall project management style. Whereas Agile is meant to be more of a, let's see how this goes. We kind of want to deliver. It's about delivering an MVP, and then constantly iterating on making it better, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a waterfall is more about we need to deliver it here now, and then how can we get that? And so then we need to just essentially just meet the deadline there. So it's two different ethos of working, and trying to mash that together, which is fun.
Yes. By the way, I think I just remember you said MVP, and I think I just want to define for our listeners, it's not the NBA All-Star team or something. In these fields, it means minimum viable product. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna call us out when we start going like too nerdy and like, you know, I just think, yeah, no, but like, I know what you mean. So like, I think in my consultancy firm, it's not the same as guys, by the way. We do have like it's a large one with thousands of people, and yeah, like when you do agile over the top of that sort of structure, it creates those sometimes it's tensions. Yeah, there is some yeah difficulties to say the least in that approach. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think bringing back to the whole IT space and how Agile kind of came into being, it was good, and I think they see a lot of. I mean, that's how a lot of the tech companies succeeded, right? Because they were able to apply this
Yeah.
methodology. And nowadays, a lot of companies are seeing that as oh, this is a good ways of working. Let's apply that to everything.
Yeah.
And that's where, for me, is the biggest issue is that sometimes Agile isn't meant to apply for if you want to deliver something in like 2 weeks. Don't think Agile will work in 2 day sprints.
Yeah. Let's say you are like an engineering consultancy firm or something, and you applied Agile to the construction of a bridge of like, you know, thousands of times. I might tell the CEO that's not a good idea. Just saying.
Yeah. I mean, hey, the MVP could be build it out of the lollipop sticks, which is what we did
Yes.
back in first year. Try that
Classic
one first.
first year engineering.
Yeah.
That will definitely apply. Like, once you got the MVP, you can scale it 1,000.
Exactly.
It'll be all good, right? That's how physics works.
Mine was able to carry 20 kgs worth, and so I think that's a good starting point. That's half a person.
I remember my popsicle stick bridge broke on the first weights in that challenge. We were so sad. Yeah. But and that's a good idea. I think like, yeah, it's true that I think Agile can't necessarily be applied for everything. But I think there are some areas that you could probably apply it to, and it can bring great dividends. Yeah, not all areas. Like for example, recently at my organization, I worked on like a bit of a video project where we were just producing like a promotional video with like lots of shots and stuff, and we did daily stand-ups and had Scrum, you know, like processes for, you know, like a complex process like that, and it does, I think, yeah, it can be used for certain things, so worked out pretty well for us.
I find that especially in like the data and software space where, as you mentioned before, Dylan, how there's so much jargon, it's completely a new language that you have to pick up. Most of the times it's mindful to just ask like, oh, like what do you mean by that? I mean,
Yes.
it's always such a lifelong journey of like learning what acronyms mean and what people are actually trying to do or say when they say a specific phrase.
Yeah.
But once you understand the context behind it, like, it's good to know, oh, okay, you're trying to do ABC when you say a certain thing.
I agree, and I
Yeah.
do think when you first start your career, I think the biggest lesson for me is that don't be afraid to ask like questions, because I feel like everyone comes from a different background, and for me, I never had any software dev experience, and so when I came into some engagements or projects, they were like, "Oh, put in the prod environment, and then test environment, and then prod." I'm like, "What are those environments? And why do we have
I had
duplicates?"
the exact same problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
Can't we test it in prod? What do you mean?
in that sense, yeah, you know, like though, like especially software, sometimes like, it can be very hard to get it, like, you know, within it, like can feel more exclusive than a lot of other areas if you don't know every single jargon piece or anything. But it is up to both sides, one side to ask and the other side to answer, you know, those who know to share, and in that way I guess that's the best way forward. Yeah.
I guess switching things up a bit, like what do you do in your daily, I guess, BAU, Dylan? What's your role like? And if people wanted to see if they want a career in that, what should they expect?
At the moment I do like a whole bunch of stuff in terms of digital technologies mixed with data analytics. So it could be building dashboards on Power BI and and then sorting out like tech infrastructure with like our clients' data sets and stuff to make that all possible. And I think I technically have done even a little bit of software dev work as well, writing code for products, not an entire, app, but like little bits that people will then use. So if you want a bit of everything, you can, hit me up and I'll let you know if we got stuff available.
I guess what's been the most memorable, or what do you enjoy the most out of the role that you've done so far?
Hmm.
And you can
I
think
think
your answer in advance, Kelly. The question's coming to you next.
Oh,
wow. This is harder than a job interview. Now, what I really like about data analysis in that sense is just seeing the result. Like there's a whole lot of work, firstly to get to the end insights bit, but just seeing the insights in the hands or minds of others that you've delivered it to, someone who's commissioned it to you, that's quite satisfying. When people are learning something new, because you sort of walk them over like some graphs that you made, and you sort of explain what that means, or they just look at the stuff you've sent them, and they figure stuff out on their own, and they're making better decisions, making every day better as a result of my work. So that's quite satisfying. It's the impact on the real world and how it changes decisions for the better. That's essentially my answer.
Great answer. Kelly, how about
Yeah.
you?
I would agree with Dylan as well. I think, like knowing the why behind what you do is really rewarding, especially, I guess, like not say making something out of nothing, but when you're dealing with data, it's just like gobbledygook of numbers.
Stamping ones and zeros.
Yeah, just like and like finding patterns in it, finding insights, or even just like implementing a small change in this legacy of code that affects the strategy of a whole department, or even like thousands of cabin crew. That's something like that's pretty special, Like I guess as the meme once said, "There ain't much, but it's humble work." And it's nice to know that when you know your own strengths, and when you know like what you enjoy, even if it means like how you can play your personality to your strengths. There is a wide range available in like data and software engineering. So like there's like a whole spectrum from people facing to more technical operational, or if you want to be like a subject matter expert, just kind of consulting, or if you want to work in a team of like-minded people, I think having that freedom to explore and to understand what these different roles would entail is also quite exciting as well.
Yeah. And I think one thing I just want to mention, sometimes actually being in the software industry or even data, like, sometimes I think some people assume that you need to be really pro at coding. And often most people have like the basics. Some roles require even nothing, even in like say, I think like product managers and stuff, like you probably don't really need too much. But you're still in the software industry possibly. And there's a lot of people skills basically, which is contradictory to what many people think for these industries.
And I do think that now in today's environments, you can't necessarily go without having that, I guess, people skills. Because fundamentally, how to make good code is to be able to explain to other people. There's always this mind trap where everyone goes to like, "Oh, my code is self-documenting," which it never is.
Reminds me of the time like back in uni where you literally work in teams and you read the code and there'll be 0 comments in it, and I'm like, this is nasty. Like communication is key, guys. Especially when you're working in teams to solve problems, and these problems can be quite big and complex. I think what people I guess one misconception that people have is that just because you're working with like a black screen or lots of numbers or things that doesn't look like common English means that you can get away with not having to explain what you're doing. In some sense, it makes it more important to communicate, understand, and yeah.
Because I do think that, like, with that, like, when you hand over your work, there's always that aspect to things, and someone else has to pick it up. And that communication process, although you can get it by like working your, let's say, 20 years into the job just coding away, someone else has got to pick that up. And if you can't, I mean, there's also times when you write code, and then 2 weeks later, when you pick up the same code, you're confused as to what you're trying to do in the first place.
Yeah, like say after like annual break, Christmas and New Year's, you're just like, what is this jumble that I did just 2 or 3 weeks ago?
I think of it as like empowering people, because it's like, say if Guy's a great coder and he's like good at what he does, and he's able to pass that knowledge, able to pass that questionable knowledge on to other people.
So
you're like, you're growing people to code more like Guy. Then you have multiple coders that are like Guy.
I don't think that's a good thing.
Yes, then I think it's basically the thing of every bit of code, every sort of table and cell of data, it can have an impact on people. And if you are, very proactive and helpful, respectful, and great with the communication, it can do a lot. Basically every word you say and every word you code, every 1 and 0 all adds together to build a better working world for everyone around you. Right, guys?
Yes, very much so, Dylan. I guess going back to this idea of stereotypes, now we've kind of delved into, tech people kind of being assumed as quite just doing their own work, aren't very communicative. Has that been experienced in your companies, or has that evolved?
I think mostly not, but there are usually it's like 1 or 2 examples of people who tend to work outside of that sort of expectation. But in the whole, I mean, nah. What about you, Kelly?
I would say that I strongly believed in this stereotype. So I guess one thing I thought of when I was studying like all of these I get like stats and IT stuff is like, surely if I become like nerdy enough, I can just like do my own nerdy thing and not have to talk to people and life will be sweet. Whereas in reality, when you're working in a company, I'm not sure if I truly understood the concept of a company, but there's thousands of people there and you're working in teams, and that's how you like create good solutions, right? So it's about like piling together all your information. Sometimes like when you have working with people, it's not like 1 + 1 = 2, it's like 1 + 1 = like 10.
Yes, exponential growth, exponential results. I think just talking to people, in work and outside of work and engaging is cool.
So I guess for me, it was about breaking their own stereotype for myself as well. Like talking to people and be like, hey, this is what I got. What do you think of it? Do you have any ideas? And then they'll like suggest something and be like, oh, and you can like work on it together and come up with something that maybe you haven't even thought about before.
A lot of satisfaction from working in good teams and talking to good people who you work with. Cool. I was just wondering, one further question is just sort of about the industries as a whole. You guys have any thoughts on the software industry or the data industry, whether it's looking good right now for people who want to work there, and what the future might be like? Is there potential? Is one of them on the downfall soon enough? What do you guys think for people who are considering entering at this stage?
I think within the user market, especially, and the role within data, it's still new, and I think it's still quite emerging in its current space. Although everyone says the big data has been around for quite a while, New Zealand's been quite slow to adapt and movement to change is still ongoing, and I do think it's an exciting time for people who want to be in that space to get involved. Although it might take a while for the industry to catch up to what other companies like the Microsofts and Googles all the way up in America are doing. It's good to know, I guess, how it works holistically. And you can always look and see what they're doing and better improve it, which is always pretty good. So I think the prospects within the data space is quite good, and there's plenty of different roles for you to get behind on. You don't always just need to be the coder or someone who knows statistics or like ML in the theory space to get behind it. One job that I've recently done is a data strategy and governance piece around how companies should run, and this is an entire data ownership idea that needs to be prevailed that's not really taken on board, and I think that's an exciting space to be in, merging the two talking and then not so talking parts together.
Exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about software? What's up there?
From what I've heard down the grapevine, I think there's a shortage of people in the software. I'm not sure if this is propagated because of the pandemic, and so there's like a less movement of people. But I would say that there's always demand in this space, especially with things moving at the rate that they are, and like people wanting to develop new things and try new features out, with lots of changes happening because of COVID as well. That being said, I think New Zealand is quite an interesting space in the such that we do have a lot of startup companies in software, or like medium-sized companies, and there's a huge spirit of innovation in terms of developing new software. And so you may not necessarily work in a big company, but there is some pretty cool stuff out there. Especially I heard in Wellington is like a big tech hub. Is that true?
There's quite a bit of a scene here. Personally, haven't really been part of it, but I've heard a few people who've been in that community. Auckland, Wellington. You can go all over, even small towns in the middle of nowhere in the country, because for both of these types of roles, you can probably work remotely if you really want, but some people do work 100%, from home. But yeah, yeah. So I guess the one last thing I think everyone is probably dying to know from this podcast, what would you give as like a piece of wisdom for anyone who's considering, let's say, your typical university student who's not 100% sure what they're going to go into? What do they need to know before embarking on this wild and treacherous journey in your respective careers?
Should I start?
Yeah, kick it off, Kelly.
Yeah. I guess data and software alike, things are changing, and I guess with the rate that internet is going at, like, there's lots of information out there to pick up. So I guess sometimes it is overwhelming knowing where to start. If you're a grad or a university student thinking about job prospects, one thing I like to do sometimes is to go and seek and just look at all the jobs, and they will have like a list of skills that you need. So it's a good way to see what the industry is looking for in terms of skill sets, and then just going on Google and being like, what is this skill? What do I need to do? And maybe like pick up a thing or two. Yeah, otherwise knowing what your skill sets are is also important, and how you can sell yourself. And at the rate that things are moving, I think having an open mind to learn things is very important as well. One thing to emotionally prepare yourself for is, say if I am really, really good at this skill and then it becomes redundant within like the next 3 years, have I learned any transferable skills that I can use to pick up a new skill? Like, for example, your critical thinking skills, that's quite transferable, or even like your people skills.
Yeah, I'll jump on the back of that. So I think keeping an open mind is one of my advice, because I do think that coming out of university, job hunting is a pain. No one enjoys that experience. But also, don't go into, I guess, the new role or new jobs you have with, I guess, set expectations of this is what I expect it to be, because it's never going to be like that. I think there's a lot more experiences that will come to you that you don't even expect. And if you are to, I guess, broaden your horizons, kind of take that for what it is, you can get a lot more out of it. So yeah, don't. I mean, it's good to have a vision and drive to where you want to be, but also don't close out any other experiences that may come your way. Yeah.
I completely agree, Guy. I was gonna say something sort of similar but different. Yeah. For me, I think the biggest piece of advice is probably to obviously, build up some technical skills, maybe a suite, or like become more specialized at something. But that's not the main thing, I think. That is important, but I think on top of that, it is really helpful if you also build other interests on top of that. So completely outside of the tech sort of sector, anything really, like arts or, like sort of sports travel, or just, I think it's like
Podcasting,
when you
Dylan?
have yeah, podcasting. No, like when you have like a wider view of the world, more open-minded, you can create better products and services, and provide a better experience to the people that you'll be talking to. Like, yeah, anything when you have that knowledge of the world that you're analyzing, as a data analyst, you can bring that unique perspective, so that it's not just the same thing as any other data analyst is doing. You're putting things through spreadsheets and dashboards and stuff. You have that unique twist that can give you an edge. And same with software, I imagine. I guess you can build your own crazy app on whatever you're interested in. I don't know.
And figuring out what's next.
Yeah. Wow. It is exciting times indeed. That's all I think I will leave you guys with. Who knows what the future will bring? Who knows if any of us three will stay in the current roles that we have? We might switch to the other side or be completely different. But anyways, but just keep an open mind and continue listening to Chillin' with Dylan podcasts. My final recommendation. There'll be more great career-focused podcasts, as well as a lot of other entertaining and enjoyable podcasts of other genres. So thanks so much for listening in. For you, the viewers, we hope you've enjoyed the podcast today. You have listened to another episode of Chillin' with
Dylan.
Dylan!
All right, we're out.